So here we are, it's the year end episode. We've done almost 50 of the Uru Labs episode. So I just wanted to see how we can wrap it up. But interestingly, we have Sushil with us, and so I'll let Sushil explain more about what he does and why he is here. But I'd like to just say I have worked with Sushil for a long time, and what it's been 4 years, 5 years now, I think.
No, 6, 7 years now.
6, 7 years now. Well, I've been underestimating the amount of time we have worked. But it's interesting. There is a lot of work around communities and communications that are a natural course of public engagement and public policy. And from when we started doing a bunch of things, uh, it's grown this big and it is what it is. I mean, audience still need to like what we say and what is coming out of it. And I'm hoping that it is going to be useful. But I want to ask you, why did you want to come and look at Uru Labs? I've been talking to you about it for a while now, right? And
Since it began, yeah.
since I began, okay, since I began, yes. So why did you want to be here?
Thanks, Satya, for inviting me over here for this. Yeah, the reason I wanted to be here and be part of this podcast is because one, I definitely feel that whatever you speak with your guests who are domain experts in the topic that you're discussing is extremely important for people like me and others in the city to understand how the system works and what are its shortcomings, what are the ways in which we can work things around. All of that stuff has been very well, intricately captured in your talks, and I personally found it very insightful. And I thought, in some level, I should be part of this conversation. In what level? That's coming to the second point. The second point is to see how we can humanize the stories that you've already covered so far the last 1 year, and to see if we can have like a common man talk through this show so that we connect with a wider audience, because I'm not personally a technical person like you. I'm more of a communication, marketing, design kind of person. And so I'd like to understand things that are broken down further so that we make more sense to a larger audience. That's the reason. These are the two main reasons why I'm here.
Nice to have you on board, and maybe we can do a lot more in the coming year. Looking forward to 2024. So, do you think we should have another season?
I absolutely think so. I mean, what? You can't ask. You shouldn't. I mean, there is no question of having another uh, second season.
Hmm.
We definitely should have season two.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we should just think it over. Are we like, having a longer session? Like, are we going to keep the same thing, same format, or are we going to keep it shorter, more succinct, and things like that? That's something that I think we can evolve over a lot more conversations.
So, I think the viewers can expect some changes and some other things. You think we can do a little more?
Yeah, I think we'll cover that in our conversations. We just have to understand how do we break it. I mean, without losing much of the insights that come through.
Hmm.
That's a very important part. In fact, the whole reason why you're doing this thing is to deep dive into the topics that are being covered, right? So, how much of it can be abstracted is something that we have to intelligently do rather than just do it only for qualifying it into a smaller segment, right? So I think we'll just let it evolve over a period of time. We'll also see how we can kind of, in every month we will have our conversation on the previous three conversations or four episodes that you've done, and then we can break it down to smaller pieces, more easier pieces for people to understand.
But wrapping up the year, I think there have been interesting conversations, and I know you have been involved in a lot of the projects on the ground with a bunch of people. What has been your experience in community involvement and engagement and communicating with people? How do you think? See, in the show, we are trying to bring public policy to a certain level. It's not just about the writing of the policy. It's about the people who do things on the ground, who go out there, It could be the government which is doing certain things, rightly or wrongly, or inefficiently or efficiently, they are doing a few things. Then there is the whole industry which tries to put out products which we consume in our general public sphere, and they have certain things to do. They also build things for us. And there is the society at large, which even the people in the government
You and
and
I are
this thing,
part of, yeah.
right, we are a part of. In on the society side, there are so many variations of people and the work they do and how it converges or not, or how it diverges from what we want to achieve as a collective.
Mm.
What have they been the things that you think stood out for you in the last 1 year and the past few years that you've been working in this space?
So yeah, that's a deep question. The reason why I wanted to be in the public space was because I have been in the corporate sector, and I've also been in family business and things like that. So the things that I'd seen was, we used all our expertise, all our professionalism, all the experiential wisdom in promoting certain products or certain services that only kind of reach out to a small segment of the people, right? So um, I was wanting, I just thought, what if we bring that expertise, that understanding, and use it in communication design for public impact projects? Because I clearly saw a huge gap there. It was not for an opportunity; it was in the purest commercial sense. But what I wanted to see was that there was an opportunity for learning something and evolving along with people who are part of change making in the society, and that was very exciting for me. So how would you want communications to be designed? How would bureaucrats look at communications? How would the political system want a set of communications for outreach program? I'm not talking about big ticket events. I'm talking about everyday policies changes, like there is new buses being released, or a certain traffic infrastructure has been added to the system, or non-motorized transport policy. How do you make those things more digestible for people, in just like any other brand would do? Even if you break down the complexities, make it easier for everybody across the spectrum to kind of look and understand it. So that was a very challenging thing, and I thought, why not? I mean, I should probably get into this, and that's how I connected with you. And the journey has been on for 6 7 years. And the only major difference that I see from working in the private sector to this sector that I'm in is that it's very bottoms up uh, interventions that we do. I've seen it with you. I've seen it with others in the in Bangalore that I've worked with or are known. They all are at the grassroots. If you want change to happen, if you want some kind of tangible impact to happen, I've seen people get on the street, get on the road, get on the ground, and make connections with community with whom they want those changes to be applied to, and they build out that impact as a co-evolving process. uh, so that to me was a big learning experience, and I think I'm really enjoying it, because for me, when I'm mostly on the ground when I'm designing a campaign, or I'm running a campaign, or designing some products for the government, which has gone into public use. So it's that connect with the people uh, on the ground that makes our journeys a lot more enriching and exciting.
Makes a lot of sense. That has been the attempt of Uru Labs also, is to try and see how we, over the last year, I've spoken with many, many people who have done a lot of wonderful things. There are organizations, there are agencies, there are individuals who have been doing projects and things on the ground. And the macro aspect I have found in all of these is the common thread is there is the whole government has been kind of lagging in some way, right?
Mm.
It's not so proactive because they have their own kind of
Systems, yeah.
the systems have been built and designed for an era which doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
The But then you can't radically alter a system considering Bengaluru as a city and then look at Karnataka and see the rest of them are lagging. That doesn't mean that the systemic change is going to not benefit other people. But broadly, we have been failing in being able to govern cities. 70% of our population are in cities, and it's a huge labor market. There's a huge amount of growth that's happening, a lot of consumption of everything, including from energy to resources to everything, is being consumed in the cities. Innovations are happening in the cities, trade is happening in the cities. It's not that the rural areas don't do these things, but the clear urban rural divide has kind of disappeared. There are more and more urban centers coming up. What a city used to be earlier is not what it is, and it is rapidly transforming with a lot of these changes coming in. The ability of the governments to keep up has been a problem.
But that's how always been the case, no? Whether it is now or 20 years back, it's always been the case. I mean, I know technology has made our lives a lot easier, but governments have always been slow, and I think it is by design, right? Rather than
Not designed to be slow, but by design for accountability is definitely there, which means you cannot have a bunch of people running so fast that they corner certain resources. The accountability to not spread it evenly, but to allow others to also grow at their own pace and be able to safeguard certain interest, provide certain basic welfare services, provide the level playing field for other people also to come up is something that uh, kind of puts the government a little back. But what it needs to start realizing is how do you create these sandboxes in cities which allow certain things to run faster, and see what comes out of that, and then come back and see how do you regulate. Right, one of the things we need to understand is we seem to run to the government for a lot of things. Right, we seem to think that they will solve all the problems,
we don't
whereas
run to the government. That's the problem, no? We don't run to the government. We just look up to the government to solve some problems, even without us
right,
going to the government.
so that's what I meant, is that we depend on the government to solve problems while we create them. Right, at the end of the day, we don't have a framework for saying you can't individually create a lot of these problems and then kind of look at the government. They will in certain extents, but the over reliance on government solutions for everything, for a lot of things, is a huge challenge, and it comes up. So creating intermediaries in some way, creating dispute resolutions in certain ways, and looking at it under the framework of the constitution, not necessarily extrajudicial, extra constitutional stuff, and decentralizing. More and more I talk to people, it becomes extremely important to say, I have to cede some control in order to gain benefits. Right? That fear is still there. Is a fear of saying that if I am not involved, will people stop knowing me? That's a political reality that people are facing, and there's a lot of money involved as well, right? So we are seeing that that holds people back. The individual ambitions of politicians to see, I want to be in control, I want to show that I'm doing all these things so that I can come back and do the job. They're afraid of losing the job. If you lose the job, there's no point of working all these things and then saying, okay, I did all these things and then the next day I'm not there. Right, they're also looking for some certainty in their job so they can continue to build upon what it is.
A lot of them have spoken about how they look at problems and what kind of solutions can come. That's what they've spoken by and large in your podcast. Is it even fair to ask citizens to do what the government is supposed to do?
See, I think to answer that question, we need to go back to understand what is the government supposed to do. Right, that itself is something that we don't know. We need to understand that the government is there as a social contract between individuals and somebody that we have appointed to resolve certain issues that we have. Let's say you and I, we have the ability to exchange thoughts, ideas. We can trade between ourselves, we can deliver services, that I sell you a product, you give it back to me, and then you pay for it. And we have regular interactions between citizens, which as at a private level, which is good. Right, uh, that needs to continue. Right, and when I, let's say, I steal from you or I cheat you or do something like that, we have basically, at that point in time, we give up some of our rights to somebody we have represented as the government and say, look, at this point, I give up my right to be a free individual. You can come and kind of imprison me, or through a proper process, understand who was in the wrong and then do justice. So there are a few of these kind of things that the government can step in. Now that takes on many form and complexities when we get into real life, right? The cheating or the um, what we call encroachment of freedoms of individuals is one aspect. The other is when we make our choices, we cause a collective problem, which is
Mm.
you buy a car, I buy a car, everybody buys a car, and then we just all clog the streets,
Mm.
right? A simple example that we can all relate to. At that point, we have caused a problem without us being able to account for it. We don't know how many others are buying cars, but we
Mm.
just think that my car alone is not going to solve the problem. At that point, the government can step in and say what we can do and what we cannot do.
Mm.
And then some kind of equalization happens, saying that you all can't be clogging this road. I can't keep indefinitely increasing supply for you. So I'll equalize that by putting public transport or asking people to say, are there any other options that you guys can avail? More effective, more efficient, better options, which I will provide space for. I will enable that. So I'll enable buses to go faster, I'll enable trains to go faster, I'll provide you to walk and cycle and things like that. So you start equalizing
Mm.
the available bandwidth, right? And in return, they collect some taxes to say how you do this. So the government is solving two types of problems, which is interpersonal problems of disputes amongst ourselves, and collective action problems. What they call is that we all collectively cause certain problems, and they step in and say you can't do these kind of things, and that comes in the form of regulation, policies, and things like that. And this is what the lawmakers look for.
Mm.
So I have a policy, it is working fine, but hey, the scenario has changed now. There are new different things coming up. For us to do certain things without causing problems to everybody else and to each other. That's the role of the government. We are not expecting to solve those problems,
Mm.
right? But at the end of the day, we are also expected to be prudent enough to gather enough information to say that my action is causing some problems.
Mm.
Things like climate change and things like that, right? You have your individual responsibilities, which you cannot shy away from. Yes, the government has to step in and make macro level adjustments. You don't know enough information, so I have the broad information. I'll tell you how to behave. But then you have to start respecting that behavior and say that if the government is doing this and penalizing some people for causing certain harm and some other expected behavior is nicer, we should do that. So we don't collect that information and we poo poo that and say, no, I will do what I want to do.
Mm.
And you are supposed to only enable me doing that all the time, right? So the things are not necessarily an interpersonal thing, and it's some kind of inequity, like basic education, basic healthcare, and things like that is something that they do even under the constitution. They are expected to do so. Nobody is expecting to take those functions and do it yourself, but what you need to do is work and understand why are certain policies still old and not old. Why are they having to be rewritten? What are the new changed realities of our society? How do we behave as individuals which conform to certain things that are useful?
Mm.
You can always say traffic rules don't apply to me. I can go wherever I want. I want to save 50 rupees, I will go the wrong way.
Mm.
Or 50 paisa also to just to,
Yeah, which
to
many
fill up
people
the,
do that.
which
Mm.
many people do that. So when you start doing behaviors like that and start breaking norms, right, you start then causing problems in general. You start causing danger to others. And that time when people come in and try to fix it, you have to be a, so there are things that you have to do. And there are things, and I can't keep rah-rahing only those things.
Mm.
When somebody else has a different opinion, we have to listen and say, why not? Can he say that he's my representative? Yes, he is, and he's trying to solve a collective problem.
But you've been in this for the last 10, more than 10 years, more than a decade. And how has your experience been? The sense, like, in, let's say, the area you live in, Sanjay Nagar, were you able to get, I know back in the day when we spoke, I mean, you said the 260 kilometers of cycle lanes is going to be, is planned in Bangalore city. How much of it has actually happened?
Why isn't it happening is the question, right?
Okay, yeah. Okay.
That goes back to the courage. Is people will say, I have exactly this much space and my car is already getting stuck. How can you give just 1.5 meters of space? One and a
Mm.
half meters is your car tire also won't fit in it, but
Mm.
still it's a loss of
Yeah.
something you think is a problem that you will
You're
lose.
narrowing the carriageway.
You're narrowing the carriageway by one tire width. You won't think of it. You think the whole car lane is going to be taken, but it's one tire width that is going away. You are not willing to accommodate that, and you go out on the street and say, nobody else can get anything, I need it first.
Mm.
So when you start having those oppositions, the politicians are going to step back and say, look, in the scheme of things, not enough people seem to accept it.
Mm.
They're not going to make policies for things that are not there. So this is where I think the civil society and our communications come back, and in trying to say that collectively, can we start understanding more of these issues
Mm.
in the nuances that there is?
But there are no forums for those things for citizens to understand these things. And of course, your medium is one, your podcast is one. but there are no easily accessible or understand. Media is now busy with whatever ideologies that they are peddling with, and there are some YouTube channels that kind of give some wisdom into all of these things, but some of them are uh, called inaccurate, and all of that stuff. It's not exactly researched documentation.
Brief summary is understand that all problems will not be solved only by the government, but
Mm.
there are problems that they have to solve in which they are actually failing.
Mm.
Why? Because we are seeing a lot of staffing issues. In one of my podcasts, we have spoken about that.
Mm.
Right? There is really very low staffing. There is really very low capacity and capabilities there.
Mm. Yeah, I
They will
saw.
not accept it. It
Yeah.
seems like an ego thing if you go and tell a bureaucrat you don't know enough.
Mm.
He knows enough in general to be able to coordinate, but he needs to rope in more and more experts to come
Mm.
in and do this thing. So I think broadly we have to look at the government accepting the flaws
Sure. Yeah.
and trying to see how do we make incremental systemic improvements and not one big bang project.
Yeah.
Because big bang projects is how they can tell you that please elect me back, here's the shiny little thing I've given you.
Mm.
If you start saying that I don't want the shiny little thing, show me the systemic benefits, it's dry and drab because you're looking at policies.
Mm.
You want the bike lanes, you need to start looking at an active mobility policy, you have to start looking at the plans for the whole thing, and you have to, no politician is willing to sell a plan or
Yeah.
not know how to sell a plan. What is the long term benefits for you that I have given?
Mm.
They are not willing to do that. And then the bureaucratic infighting, all of those things, they're not able to solve that. They are not having the time to solve that. They are always constantly chasing somebody else's tail. They are not building enough staffing and expertise within their groups to come back and give
And
them
plus, it
constant
doesn't help
inputs.
when governments change, especially in Karnataka. The last 5 years, we've had five chief ministers, right? So, and with that, the bureaucratic shuffle also
And
happens.
that's a
So,
very important part, right? How do you get these people? Where do they come out of? Where do leaders come out of? You're
mm.
not cultivating enough of them.
Mm.
You're just going around the same block of cadres that you've already
Because there
built.
is there is a paucity of leaders, right?
There's a paucity of intelligent leaders
Mm.
who you are willing to reward, who you are willing to evaluate, who you are willing to go out. I was just talking to someone else who was saying that now we have land titles. We actually, this property has a title now. It just used to be a history of encumbrances and
Mm.
sale deeds that you need to trace back. You'll need to do history geography checking before you actually say this is kosher.
Mm.
Now you have a title. It was never sold to us as a title. Where is the communication around land titles? Give you a clear title. You just have to show this thing. That's a beautiful thing that has happened.
Mm.
Even in the central government, there are so many schemes which are being sold to you as saying that this is good, this is what it leads to, this is how it is going to do. We have to, as people, understand shiny projects are not systemic changes. They are not going to benefit you until we start realizing shiny projects are not appropriate. And you have to take the pains of gathering enough information about the shiny project. Is it appropriate? How do you know it is appropriate? You said that there is paucity of people telling you these stories.
Mm.
It will not, one story will always not be correct.
Sure.
What
Yeah.
I tell is biased by what I see.
Mm.
What somebody else tells will be biased by what they see. Information gathering and putting your brains and understanding that is an outcome of the education that you have acquired. Is that don't pass a judgment too quickly and understand more and more and more. Ask, be curious and understand more and
Mm.
understand the role of what the business does, what is its importance, and how much they can solve. What is the role of regulation and governance and police and enforcement, and how do
Mm.
you hold politicians accountable for that? How do you look at more and more local self government? You want a Bangalore doesn't have a city government.
Yeah, it doesn't have. Mm.
Yeah, so they keep postponing because the MLAs are saying, I want to be elected back in the job, so I want to show nice things now.
Mm.
I am not going to get nice things if I'm just giving it off to the corporator. He's going to stand there and he's going to claim all the credit,
Mm.
and I'm not going to get anything. But then they have to go back into the legislature and say, look, this is the systemic policy which enabled that. Here's the Bangalore governance bill which enabled you to have a corporator.
Mm.
Sell that and say, I have enabled a system which will last you for the next 2 decades or 3 decades at least before you go back and review that. I went in and campaigned and got some things. Right now, it's all transactional. I'll get X amount of money, I do X amount of projects. I should place the blame directly on the people for what you have, how you vote, and how you want to evaluate these leaders.
I don't think that's really fair to say that, because a lot of people, like I know I've spoken to, as part of many of my campaigns where I go and interview people, common people, and their this thing is, look, I'm busy. I have my personal problems. I have my professional problems. I have my EMIs. I have my schools. I mean, kids' education. I have a lot of 100 things that are there in my head now. You know, uh, it's not nice to expect me to come on the road and ask for uh, better roads. I mean, remove the potholes and things like that, because that's understood as part of the government's mandate to provide for me, right? People are, I think, more easily resigning to the fact that okay, this is how much we're going to get, no matter what, no matter who
Well,
comes.
I think that is exactly what is not active citizenship. You have a very fair point. A lot of activities are not going to be doable with a lot of busy people. So don't expect everybody to come on. But it is incumbent on the few people who are willing to come out and go back and ask other people. It could just be a WhatsApp poll, whatever poll you want to do, and float out a questionnaire and ask people, if we did this, wouldn't you like it? Are there things that you know about all these things?
Mm.
And I think we should do a lot more better job of communication, which exactly is what you
Mm.
have been trying to do, and you've had a lot of success with. I want to ask you about the bus thing that you recently did and how it has become a big success, right? Now, that came out of engagement and a continuous communication. Communication is the key, and how you do it. Right now, with the communications, it's all twisted. Everybody wants to sell their story alone.
Sure.
Are there neutral communicators who come back and say, if I evaluate it is good, but then when there are things that are not going right, that is the thing, right? When you voted someone, you can't resign yourself. Not everybody. You can't resign yourself to saying that I don't know what he's doing, it doesn't matter.
Mm.
There are flashy little things you will see, and you make your opinions on that.
Okay, just to be clear, when Satya says flashy little things, means big flyovers,
Yeah.
multi-level flyovers, wider roads for
Big
more
wide roads.
cars. These are the flashy little things, not the gadgets or shiny objects that we perceive it as.
Yeah, so
Okay,
you can see my bias already,
yeah.
right? So you need to start looking at Satya has this
It's
bias.
important to understand how these guys also speak, because in the beginning I used to think flashy little thing was something else. Maybe an iPhone, or maybe I don't know, maybe a car. Maybe ministers want a big Rolls Royce or a Range Rover or something. Maybe that's what he was talking about. Jokingly making an exaggeration, of course. But I didn't know exactly what. Uh, there are a lot of terminologies that these people use because they've been uh, soaked into the system, and they speak that language very fluently, and you need to understand how what they mean when they say a lot of things. So yeah.
And hold people accountable for systemic changes. The MLAs need to go back and do the hard work of reading rules and regulations, changing them, holding agencies accountable, removing agencies that are not doing their job, bringing these people in, because tomorrow they will be voted on that. They don't realize they are not able to make hard decisions. Who's going to sell congestion charging to people?
Mm.
Somebody has to. They are not going to do it. There's something technical there, which is it is not popular.
It's not popular, yeah.
So it is still radical. How do you make it popular before politicians can accept that? Whose job is it to make it popular? That we got a little bit extra footpath, which is little decent,
Which we take even
which we
today.
take even today. And you and I walked just before this thing. We walked over there, and
Yeah,
we just it's going to see it, but it is there. It was better than the broken slabs which are there. Did we
absolutely.
get the perfect one? No, we didn't. Now what do? We go back incrementally and say, okay, what's the next thing that we can do?
Yeah.
Because the people fought for not having this.
Mm.
The shopkeeper said the parking has to be right in front of my shop, and he literally fought in front of the inspector. That guy came and said, I'll see how you will do this. So those kind of bravado, false bravado, there are coteries, there are thugs, all those things are there. So the government is facing all that, right? So not to let them off the hook, but incrementally can we get more things done?
Mm.
So a lot. I think we should go through this over the next few episodes. I
Absolutely.
don't want to bore people with all of this in the first cut itself.
Yeah.
So it's been a good year as far as I can tell, and looking forward to having you on board as well. What do you see for this?
Yeah, and I think there has to be a lot more people who are aware of how these systems work, and I think towards that endeavor, your episodes should come and have a second season as well. Bring in more diverse opinions, maybe contradicting also, just to create some kind of a
Balance.
balance of views, so to speak. So I think I'm really excited because I keep watching your show regularly. I've seen most of the episodes. I won't say that I've seen all of it. But yeah, we'll take that conversation of how to repackage it in a way that is more easily consumable. That's something that we'll keep for the next episode. But I love doing this chat with you. This chat we've anyway been having on and off every time we meet for coffee or
I
something.
know.
And So we just thought, why not have it in front of a camera? This is the first time I'm actually
Coming in.
doing
I
in front.
literally had to drag you in front of the
Yeah, I
camera.
know.
You didn't
I
want to be in front. So
so
anyway, I think, like you said, having it in front of the camera, let's put it out there. Let's see where it goes. We
yeah,
are not all perfect. We are not all, what we say is all not exactly what
yeah.
needs to happen, but we have a perspective, and it is also one of them. Listen to more, listen to
Mm.
this as well, and see how we can go forward. All right, then we wish everybody a happy new year,
Happy New Year.
and
Let's hope that the new year has more citizens to come forward and participate within their local areas and connect with people like Satya and his podcasts. And I think with that, we'll sign off. Happy New Year.
happy new year. See you on the other side. Bye bye.